In the remote mountains of Wyoming, a deadly game of cat and mouse was about to unfold. The most ruthless South American cartel had set their sights on a quiet farming valley nestled within Granite Basin. They believed they were dealing with nothing more than an aging rancher, a soft target. They couldn't have been more wrong. Alan Graves wasn't just a farmer. For 30 years, he had been the most lethal special operations commander in US history. His call sign had been Ghost, a specter that struck without warning and vanished without a trace. Now retired, he lived a quiet life, but the skills he had honed over decades were still as sharp as ever. Alan walked his property line at dawn, his German shepherd, Ajax, trotting beside him. The frost crunched under his boots as the golden light of sunrise painted the landscape. At 62, Alan still moved with the deliberate grace of a much younger man, his eyes constantly scanning his surroundings. Decades of combat had left him with habits that never faded. He stopped suddenly, kneeling to examine a fresh set of tire tracks in the mud. "Something's not right, boy," he muttered. Ajax growled softly in agreement. A familiar sound interrupted his thoughts, the rumble of Sarah Meyer's old pickup truck approaching from the gravel road. Sarah, his closest neighbor, pulled up, her face pale and anxious. "Alan, thank God you're out here," she called as she climbed out. "Have you heard about the Wilsons?" Alan stood, brushing dirt from his jeans. "What about them?" "They're gone, packed up and left in the middle of the night. No warning. This morning, I saw men at their place. Big black SUVs, armed guys who definitely aren't from around here." Alan's expression hardened. "Cartel." Sarah's grip tightened on the truck door. "That's what people in town are saying. They've been moving in, buying up properties. Those who refuse to sell, well, things happen. Accidents, fires. Nobody's standing up to them. The sheriff's in over his head." "Have they approached you yet?" Alan asked. "Not yet, but the miller's place went last week. Same story. A sudden sale, and now it's crawling with strangers." Alan nodded, his mind already mapping out possibilities. "Stay alert, Sarah. They'll come knocking sooner or later, and when they do, don't try to handle it alone. Let me know immediately." As Sarah drove away, Alan whistled for Ajax and headed toward his barn. Beneath the ordinary farm tools and hay bales was a hidden cellar he had installed years ago. Paranoia, his friends had called it. Preparation, he called it. He lifted a false floorboard, revealing a cache of military-grade gear. Weapons, communication equipment, tactical gear. Alan never expected to use it again, but old instincts told him the time had come. His phone buzzed with a text from an old contact in law enforcement. "Cartels moving fast. 7 properties taken in a month. Watch your back." Through the window, he watched 3 black SUVs creep past his gate. Reconnaissance, marking the next target. Alan scratched Ajax behind the ears. They have no idea what they're walking into. By mid-afternoon, Alan had made the first of many calls. "Rook, it's Ghost," he said, using the old nickname his team had given him. "Time to call in that favor. I need the team." "You serious?" came the reply. "It's been years. Cartels moving in, taking farms. They'll be here soon." Rook's answer was immediate. "I'll make the calls. We'll be there." By nightfall, Alan's former teammates began arriving. There was Lucas Hawk Gray, their sniper, whose steady hands and sharp eyes had saved them all more than once. Martin Blaze Ortega, the demolitions expert, brought his usual cache of creative solutions. Zach Combs Price, their tech genius, and Eric Doc Nash, their medic, rounded out the group. Together, they had faced warlords, terrorists, and armies. Now they were ready for one last mission. "Nice setup," Hawk remarked as they surveyed Alan's property. "Good sightlines, natural choke points. You've been planning for this." Alan spread a detailed map across his workbench. "The cartel's systematic. They're using these farms as distribution hubs, isolated properties with storage facilities already in place. My land is next, and it's the key to controlling the valley." "How many are we looking at?" Blaze asked. "First wave will be 20 to 30, Alan said. "Mix of muscle and ex-military. They'll come in fast, trying to overwhelm us." "Let's make sure they regret it," Hawk said with a grim smile. They worked through the night, fortifying positions, setting traps, and synchronizing their communications. Every hill, tree line, and approach route became part of the plan. By dawn, The farm was a fortress disguised as a simple ranch. The first sign of trouble came with the hum of engines. Through his surveillance feeds, Alan watched 3 SUVs roll up to his gate. Felix Vargas, the cartel's local enforcer, stepped out, flanked by armed guards. "Mr. Graves," Vargas called, his voice smooth but menacing. "Beautiful place you've got here. Be a shame if something happened to it." Alan leaned casually against the fence. "What can I do for you, Mr. Vargas?" "We represent an investment group interested in your property," Vargas said, producing a business card. $3 million, cash. Alan's eyes flicked to the 2 men sneaking toward his barn. "Not interested. This land's been in my family too long." Vargas's smile faded. "Perhaps I wasn't clear. This valley is changing. You can be part of that change, or, well, accidents happen." Alan straightened, letting a hint of steel enter his voice. "Sounds like a threat." "Just stating facts," Vargas replied. "You have 24 hours to reconsider." As the SUVs disappeared down the road, Alan's team emerged from the shadows. "They'll be back," Blaze said, checking his detonators. "Let them," Alan replied. "They'll find more than they bargained for." When the cartel returned, it was with a convoy of 20 vehicles and over 50 men. They advanced confidently, their headlights cutting through the darkness. "Positions," Alan ordered, his voice calm. The first explosions tore through the lead vehicles, flipping them into the air. The cartel soldiers scrambled, shouting orders in Spanish. Hawk's rifle cracked, dropping targets with surgical precision. Blaze's traps funneled the remaining forces into open kill zones, where the team picked them off one by one. By the time the dust settled, half of the attackers were dead or wounded. "They're regrouping," comms reported, "trying to flank us." "Not today," Alan said. He and Ajax moved silently through the chaos, eliminating threats before they could act. One moment he was a shadow, the next his enemies were on the ground, disarmed and neutralized. Felix Vargas, realizing the battle was lost, attempted to flee. Alan intercepted him, taking out his guards with brutal efficiency. "You should have done your homework," Alan said, his voice cold. "This isn't just a farm, it's a fortress." Vargas glared at him, defiant even in defeat. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "Neither did you," Alan replied, knocking him unconscious. By dawn, the battlefield was eerily quiet. Smoke rose from the wreckage of the cartel's vehicles, and captured soldiers sat zip-tied under Doc's watchful eye. Alan surveyed the damage, calculating repairs. The barn was scorched but intact. The house had taken heavy fire but remained standing. Sheriff McLean arrived with reinforcements, his jaw dropping as he took in the scene. "Alan, what the hell happened here?" "Had some uninvited guests," Alan said. "They didn't take rejection well." McLean shook his head, gesturing to the captured cartel members. "This is enough to take down their whole operation. You've done more in one night than we've managed in a year." As the FBI and DEA arrived to process the scene, Alan's team melted back into the shadows. They'd fought in places that didn't exist, carried out missions that would never see the light of day. This was no different. By the following week, the valley began to change. Neighbors who had once felt helpless now took an active role in protecting their community. Alan's team trained them in security, communication, and surveillance, turning Granite Basin into a place no cartel would dare to touch. Rumors spread among criminal networks, stories of ghostly soldiers and cursed land. "They're calling this the Shadow Valley," comms reported with a grin. "Says anyone who enters disappears." Alan looked out over his land, scarred but still standing. Good. Let them believe that. Fear can be a powerful weapon. As the sun set over the mountains, Alan and his team gathered on the porch. They weren't just defending a farm anymore. They were defending a way of life. And they would ensure no one threatened it again.